On the Illini Live. This is Mike Cagley with Ked Prince, Steve Sturm. We are here, and look, folks, the thing I talk about all the time as a coach and as a guy who covers the Illini is in perpetuity, they only remember that you won the game. They don't remember how close the score was. They don't remember how things looked all game. And I am going to enjoy the fact that Illinois came out with this. Now, what got me, Steve and Ked, is at 14-10 when Illinois got the ball, they always fiddle fart around and don't score and kind of take the end out of it. They could have done that at Wisconsin a couple times. Each time there's these key drives. Boy, if they just do this now, it'll make the game really tough. And it just never seems to get done, and the games stay close. This time, as per, I don't know, 7 of the last 8 times it's been within one score, Illinois wins. But I don't know if that strategy is going to work so good next year without one Luke Altmaier. Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
Obviously, Brett Bielema likes conservative game plans, both offensively and defensively, and that's just the way it is. And in general, I don't mind it. I think that it's easy to say, like, oh gosh, if we would have gone for it, but let's keep in mind that especially in this game, we're in a situation where we had the better team, and it was more of a situation where we wanted to make sure we didn't lose the game rather than having to go out and win it. I will say that when you're in a situation against, say, an Ohio State, where we didn't really challenge, we just kind of tried to play conservative and hope that Ohio State made the mistakes that they didn't make the entire year, that I would like to see us go a little bit bigger. But in general, I'll take the conservative game plan that leads to many wins. And I will point this out. I pointed out a couple weeks ago when we were on this podcast too. This is the second time in my lifetime that Illinois has won 8 games in a row twice. And we're in a situation where the Big Ten is amped up, meaning this is probably the best 2-year run in my lifetime, which started in 1970. So let's all just appreciate what we have rather than trying to pick stuff apart too much. Mike.
Ked, defend me. Unmute yourself.
Mike, I'm going to tell you, I'm on your side. Steve, I understand. I'm going to go 50-50. Here, I'm not going to abandon both of you. I will go with Steve first. You're right. You won 8 games. When you take a step back and you really look at it, this was a season that people were disappointed in. Anybody who's trying to tell me that people didn't think this team was trying to play for college playoffs, you're lying to yourself. I mean, I've had conversation with the players. I know the coaches talked about it. And honestly, it was disappointing to me in a roundabout way. But on the flip side of it, you're right. There's 8 wins. And when you look at the entire Big Ten conference, where Illinois is sitting right now, just think 5-6 years ago, Illinois was on the bottom half of that. Now, granted, there are some more teams there. But, Mike, to answer your question, the conservative play calling to me stinks, but I'm going to tell you guys, this is the one time we're going to disagree tonight, and I'm telling you, there's nothing that either one of you can say or a fan can say to me tonight. The defense was good tonight. It was great. My concern is the offensive line, and I'm telling you, I'm upset about it. As everybody wants to rip Aaron Henry, the defense was aggressive. They got their hands on balls. They were in right plays. And if Gabe Atkins worked his behind off, the offensive line to me is a major concern, and I'm going to probably talk about it 50% of this podcast. Steve, you weren't with us about 2 or 3 years ago. Brett Bielema was a master at running the clock out with 5 minutes to go in the game. If you can't run the football 5 yards, it doesn't work. They just gave the ball back away. You have to throw it. We can all talk about Khalil Valentine, and we can all say Caden Fagan is not a running back. I disagree. If there's no holes, the offensive line has been a disappointment. I'm not blaming the players. I'm not blaming the coaches. I'm blaming the fact that we all see. I don't care about how many yards they rushed. If you can't open the holes up, and they can't run, and Brett has he's done a great job of managing the clock. You're on first down, you can't get 5 yards. You go back 2 yards, and then on third down, you have to run it. That's not Bielema football. And we can pretend that it's okay. The offensive line is concerning me just like it is the defense, guys. I'm sorry. If you can try to tell me something different, then then I can make Stevie Wonder see again.
All right, man. That's just up to Steve. He's going to defend the offensive line.
All right, actually, I'm not, but
You
I am
can't.
going to
Not tonight, baby. I'm sorry.
No,
Listen,
so first of all, they're not that bad. The pass blocking was just fine tonight, and let's keep in mind that Northwestern wasn't playing in the super conservative, type of scheme that we talked about Illinois playing in earlier, as far as pass rush. So they were actually coming for Altmaier, and the pass blocking was pretty good tonight. I would say it's been pretty good for the most part this year. Obviously, there have been a few mistakes, but although I pointed out, Caden Fagan gave up 7 of our sacks this year. 7. More than any offensive lineman. So that was a real problem too. But, I do feel like the offensive line was overrated, maybe coming into the year, or perhaps complacent. But I am going to kind of circle back to the same theme that I've been saying as well. They didn't get pushed. It's very, very weird that we've had 7 offensive linemen play this entire year. At the end of games, at the end of blowouts, we've got our first team offensive line out there. And, where is the second team? Are those guys even working hard if they know they're not going to play? How bad could they possibly be if they cannot push these starters who don't seem to be given great effort? So, yeah, same themes we'll go back to, but I'm not going to disagree with you, Ked. I think the defense was really good tonight. I think the offensive line needs to do better in general. And yes, the rushing lanes had not been as good as they should have been. But keep in mind, I don't think that these guys are bad. I don't think they've played as well as they did last year, and there are probably some coaching-related bases for that.
I want to comment, Mike, about Illini fan 365. I'm sorry. If we can rant about the rest of the team, it is not just today. It's been all season. And everybody wants to give it a pass. You have to be able to run the football. That is Brett Bielema's football. I've watched him coach at Wisconsin, and when he first got to Illinois, the second and third year, they ran the ball down people's throats. They didn't give the ball back. They pass block tonight, great, but you have to be able to open up holes. I'm sorry, Illini fan 365, you disagree with me. I love you. Don't even know you. I've never met you before, but we're going to agree to disagree. Great, they protected Luke Altmaier tonight. You have to open up holes if you're going to play this kind of football where it's field position. Illini fan, you didn't get on when we first said it. I said I was excited about 8 wins. Steve said the fact he was excited about 8 wins. I even said the fact if you look at the entire conference, they're on the left side instead of the right side. I'm sorry, baby. I did say that. And if you don't think I'm not happy about that, I really am. Because it could be, and what I really mentioned was, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, where were you then? The team was on the other side. I'm not mad about that. I'm just disappointed because I look at the Wisconsin game. I look at, even the Ohio State game. I mean, granted, Ohio State's a great team. You let those games slip away. I'm not mad they won 8 games. Trust me. I would rather see that. And coming into the season, you've heard me say this multiple times, especially where I live at. You give me 8 or 9 wins every year, I'm excited. And I'm still excited. I don't want to see them win 3 or 4 games and people pick them to finish the bottom of the Big Ten. I don't know if that's going to happen anymore. I trust Brett as a coach. But tonight, we have criticized the defense. It was aggressive. Northwestern's not great. They gave up 13 points. But I saw the defense tonight in the second half play as good as they have all season. And Northwestern's not great. So I'm sorry you missed the first part of my rant. But I'm sick of people criticizing that part of it when the offensive line did not open up holes for people. You missed that part of it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is 8 wins is great. And I also think the if you were to talk to Brett Bielema, he would tell you that their goals were higher at the start of the year, and they would like to have hit them. I think the biggest challenge that Illinois has coming up is you are going to see in the next 5 years the Big Ten is going to look a lot more like the SEC because they are spending money to bring players and coaches in. The bar is being raised across the conference, and I think Illinois has done a good job of being one of the leaders of that. But the faster you run, the harder it is to run faster. And so I think you're going to see a Big Ten in 5 years that will be very similar to the SEC, where people are going to be saying, hey, a 3-loss team should be able to make it into the CFP. and I will go on a little bit of a mini rant here. If you want teams to continue to play good non-conference schedules, you need automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten and the SEC. Because what the Big Ten, I think, would have loved to have done this year is if they had 4 automatic qualifiers, next weekend you would see number 1 versus number 2, Indiana versus Ohio State. Both would be guaranteed a trip to the CFP. And then you would see number 3 play number 6. So I think that would be Oregon versus Iowa. And then you'd see 4 versus 5, which would be Michigan versus USC. And those 2 winners of those games would be the 4 automatic qualifiers from the Big Ten. So it would essentially allow 6 teams to have an opportunity to win those 4. And I would love automatic qualifiers, because I am worried that teams are going to say, like the big argument out there is Texas saying, hey, if we had scheduled Eastern Illinois, we'd be 10-2 right now, and we'd be in the CFP. Now, the other thing that Texas fans are forgetting is don't lose to a 3-8 Florida team or whatever they are. But the fact of the matter is they can't control their conference schedule, but they can control their non-conference schedule. So when you read the media tell you about automatic qualifiers suck, it's because they aren't bright enough to really understand what the Big Ten's trying to do here. Now, I am not gonna underline the fact that there should be a 24-team thing, because I think the Big Ten is nuts on that. But a 16-team tournament with 5 automatic qualifiers from the Big Ten and the SEC would be perfect, and it would keep the season going down to the final game exciting for a lot of teams. And that's just my thoughts on that. So I like to throw that out there. But I will say this was it was a nice finish. Illinois could have quit. This team doesn't seem to have a lot of that in it, but they came through. And I would like to see this team, the continuity next year. I'm really worried about defensive, offensive lines, and I want to see what we develop at quarterback. I think there's probably a stronger talent pool at that quarterback position than we've had in a while. But as Steve has pointed out, the backup quarterbacks haven't got a lot of time. So they could be the greatest backups of all time or not. We really don't have any idea.
But they never took a snap. They never took a snap all season. To Steve's point, Steve, you're right. I'm gonna let you go, but I'm gonna be honest with you. You educated me tonight. I had no idea about the thought about the second string or third string not getting many reps. That's scary. Sorry about to cut you off, but that's kind of scary if you think about it.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know why they went out of their way to only play 45 guys this year. It didn't make sense to me. Especially because those second and third stringers, like, they live for that at the end of the Western Illinois game, the end of the Western Michigan game. We were killing both of those teams, and the starters stayed out there. I don't quite get that. Some of the skill position players are accumulating stats. Well, why are we playing the second string offensive line? They can't be that bad. They played last year. They played the year before. I don't get it.
There must be a reason for it, and what that is, we don't know.
Hampton did get some snaps, though, this year. He did actually play a little bit against Indiana at the end, and he did get a kneel-down snap once earlier this year. Matt Stevens has kind of let us all know, and maybe – is Matt going to be on later?
Matt will be on later,
okay,
God willing.
Well, he had let us all know earlier that Ethan Hampton just kind of was a disappointment in practice. They were hoping they could bring him on to make him the starter next year, but apparently that plan is kind of scrapped. They will likely be looking outside the program for a starter next year. Carson Boyd apparently has impressed them as well, but it's going to be an outsider kind of competing with Hampton and Boyd for the job next year, but more than likely our next year's starter is somebody who's not in the program yet.
Mike, I want to talk about what you said real quick. I don't want to make this podcast about money because we did that the last time, and I don't want to bore fans. But I will tell you this. My take is I think when NIL was the hottest thing ever, that helped put Illinois on the map. I do think Brett Bielema is an outstanding coach, and you have no idea how happy I am the fact that they won 8 games. I want to say that again. But I think the transfer portal made Illinois competitive, because if you don't have the transfer portal, I don't think Illinois would have won the games they won last year. I don't think you get a Luke Altmaier. I don't think you get a Cole Russ. All these players that you got that transferred in, to me personally, are guys that you were able to get, and they weren't able to recruit those guys. The thing that scares me now is that everybody else has money. They all have money. So what are you going to sell at Illinois to make them come here, not Wisconsin, not Iowa, not Nebraska? Because it has to be different. We can talk about Brett Bielema's NFL career, his record putting guys in the NFL, and I think that's great. But the money factor right now is just not going to be – it's not going to help Illinois. And if they want to stay on the left side of the winning column and not, on the bottom half of the Big Ten, they have to be different. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what the answer is, but I know there's not going to be a lot of money. No one's going to come in and just say, here's $100 million and go buy players. That's not going to happen. Now, Matt Stevens told us that the amount of money that Ohio State has and compared to the rest of the Big Ten, he gave me a number, just what they pay for their offensive line alone, and it was scary. So Illinois has to be different. Steve, you're right. What they do in the transfer portal, the quarterback, all of that's going to be huge. This is one of Brett Bielema's most important years, I think, since he's been in the program.
I will say that the one good thing is Illinois has something to sell because of Brett Bielema, which is they are a winning team. And if you're a high school senior this year looking at the portal, looking at to commit, or you're a college player, most of your memories of Illinois, thank God, probably don't go back to Lovie Smith. And I think that's a huge positive.
Yeah.
But what do you do if, say, for example, Matt, Mike, you can't say Iowa's not a good program. You can't say Nebraska's competitive, Michigan State's doing whatever the case may be, or Washington. So you're competing against those guys. But then Steve just made me see something that I've never seen before. Why come if you're not going to play? So you have to sell something. I don't know what that is. We can sit here and we can hope and wish all we want. Because if I'm Washington or USC, that's kind of where Illinois is. They competed with those schools. You get to go out California and play. They're going to put guys in the NFL. They have great offense. So Illinois has to be different. And I don't know. Trust me, you know how much I like Brett Bielema. But that's just not going to be the only reason why kids come to Illinois anymore. I don't think, especially now when everybody else has money.
It's what Mike said. It's the stuff that used to matter in the pre-paying days. Program wins, program puts guys in the NFL. The stuff that people used to talk about before it was all about dollars is probably what separates us, meaning that, a $500,000 offer from Illinois probably means more than a $100,000 offer from Iowa. Maybe not Iowa, but Minnesota and Nebraska, because we're putting guys in the NFL right now. And we're winning games, and we're on New Year's Day bowl games. Hopefully we'll see how this year's bowl pairings works out. We're getting all the visibility that used to matter for guys before it was all about dollars and cents. That's my take on it.
And it's still going to be about dollars and cents because LSU published that open email to any prospective coach saying we're going to spend $25 million on our football team roster every year. So the money's going to be Ohio State is not going to go, oh, shucky darns, I can only spend $15 million. So I guess I'm only going to have an offensive line this year. They're not going to cut back. So there's going to be the NIL contracts that are judged, and then assigned, approved, I should say. But I do think that Illinois is going to need more than $15 million. And then I think the other thing that they have to lean into is the way I would explain it is we've been very fortunate. We've had some very talented players come through here, but they weren't highly regarded. And what can I do for a bunch of 4 stars? Boy, that would be pretty interesting to see instead of a bunch of 3 stars. And I think we'll win more games, and I think we'll have more guys drafted higher. You might be one of them. And that's the tact I would take. The other thing I think I would do is Illinois, the branding of the family, which a lot of people think is fairly trite. If you talk to the family members, Ked, you do this all the time. The family members and the players will tell you that their coaching staff really cares about them. And there's other schools out there that you just go, okay, you know what? I made it to the CFP but there's not that feeling of family. And I think they've got to try to use that as a differentiator as well. And you're going to try different things for different people because every human being is going to react. Nobody's going to react the same to everything. And look, this is Fedigator. Yeah. When I heard that Drinkwitz was staying at Missouri, that told me that Kiffin was going to LSU because Drinkwitz was talked about as like an LSU candidate, and it didn't seem like he wanted any of the other jobs, but that one he wouldn't say no to in terms of when he was asked in the press. So once he came out and said, "Hey, I'm going to stay," once he signed the deal for Missouri, in my mind, I'm not saying I'm right, but in my mind, I thought, well, that means Kiffin, someone is going to LSU. And since it was Kiffin, and Dellinger's tied to that whole Southeast Conference, but particularly LSU, Mississippi State. And I'll tell you right now, I highly recommend their broadcast. The College Football Inquirer with an I is very good, or maybe it's with an E. But anyway, they have a great podcast. So I would tell people, if you're looking for a good podcast, try the College Football Inquirer. They do a wonderful job. Dellinger's come on our show once or twice, and he was a fantastic guest, and he's actually friends with Matt Stevens. But yeah, so I thought that's the case. And to be honest with you, if I'm an old guy, but I would certainly, if I was an AD, I would look for coaches like Bielema who did more with less dollars if I was looking to build a program. Now, I know that makes me old-fashioned and backwards thinking, but that's how I would do it.
I think that's Moneyball. That's forward thinking. That's modern thinking, Mike. I'd give yourself some credit there.
Yeah, I think people like the flash. I mean, look, Lane Kiffin is. I'm gonna give you my Lane Kiffin. He's very talented, but the guy hasn't won a league title anywhere, and he started off in these great positions, the Raiders head coach, because his dad was one of the top 10 best defensive coordinators of all time, Monty Kiffin. In my opinion, if you make Ked's dad Monty Kiffin or Steve's dad Monty Kiffin, they would have got the same opportunities that Lane had, and he hasn't really done as much with it. Now, maybe he'll be able to at LSU, but ultimately, until this season, Mississippi has not, or any of his teams, they tend to have one game a year where they just don't take care of the details and they lose. So that tends to be his way, and I'm not certain if that's going to be any different if he's at LSU. We will find out. I will say he is the best number one interview in college football. And I'm not certain that's how you hire your football coach, but there is nobody that, I mean, you could pay me. I would pay to go to his press conferences because they're never dull, and he always finds a unique angle. But again, that's not a coaching thing. Steve, no. I'll let you kind of throw on your thoughts there.
Oh, so as far as coaching, I was going to say, like, I would probably go for somebody who can get more bang for your buck, because we're moving into, I mean, especially if you're not going to be one of the schools with big money, going and finding guys who don't cost as much is key. Coaching them up is obviously really important as well, but finding guys who don't cost that much money, who have the talent to be able to compete with the guys who do cost a lot of money, is the key, I would say, for like an up and coming program, or even like a mid-level program. You're Rutgers, you're Maryland, you want to be able to compete, at least, move up a tier in the Big Ten. That's what I would go for. Certainly. I would go for that Lance Leipold type who can, find some underrated guys, coach them up, compete with the guys who are spending more. Absolutely. And then as far as Lane Kiffin, boy, I wouldn't, if I'm an AD, I would probably run the other way. He's going to bring you some success. He's not a champion at any level. He's never been a champion at any level.
And this is the best year Mississippi's ever had, and most likely he's going to bail on it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It seems like it. LSU probably will have success kind of similar to how Mississippi's had success. They'll have more money to spend. They've promised to have more money to spend, and I believe they got a little bit probably more support for that program. But Lance Kiffin is a good coach, but he's not the coach who's going to lead you to a national championship. And all that stuff about being a great interview, I think, is a detriment for the most part. He's
Yeah, I agree.
entertaining for fans to see, but there's headlines that you don't want, and there's backlash that you don't want. So that's my take.
Ked, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, Mike, you need to give yourself credit. I agree with Steve. You've said on this podcast, not the specific ones, how good would Brett Bielema be if he had Ryan Day's talent, Mike? I mean, let's think about that. You know how good of a coach is. He's done decent with less. Somebody mentioned it up there earlier, but I mean, Illinois always has a bad loss. A lot of schools have a bad loss, but they've done a lot with less. And to Nathan, who asked about McCray, it was a crowded running back room and money. So I understand that. But to be honest with you, it is a crowded running back room. I mean, like, a lot of people they're not fans of Fagan, and I think he had a better offensive line. I think he'd be really good, and we can agree to disagree on that. I'm not going to rehash that, but to answer your question, it was a crowded running back room, a lot of players there, a lot of depth there. It was a good running back room, and he saw the writing on the wall going to it, and then on the flip side of it, there's money, but sometimes it doesn't always work out to your advantage. So anyway, Mike, I do. I think Brett, we talked about this at halftime a little bit. I like the approach that they're going to take. I would pay close attention to how they recruit, what they do in the offseason. I think this offseason, I mentioned it, it is very, very, very important. And if we can sit here as analysts and all these people on this chat here can see there's defensive issues, there's offensive line issues. If you think they're paying Brett Bielema, I don't know if it's $3 or $4 million a year, and he can't figure that out. Come on, guys. Hey, he can see it too. Okay, maybe it was Brad Underwood. He sees the same thing that we do. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. He's not blind. If you think he wasn't frustrated, that couldn't run the ball, or couldn't block, or the punting game was people, I think the punt tonight. I think I had 17 text messages in 30 seconds on that punt tonight because people were so mad about that. So they can see the same things. It's not just us.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially when Crimmins, he was good at Purdue. He's had a very iffy year this year, and I'm not certain. Was there something that Purdue saw that said, "Hey, we'll let this guy go"? Because I wouldn't want to let go of a good punter. But
Nobody let him go. Purdue is doesn't have much money.
Yeah.
And we offered him money to come. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And he's not bad, but he was a little disappointment for somebody who's seemed to be in the running, should have been in the running for an all-conference type situation. And he's been a little inconsistent. Obviously, the kneel down against Ohio State was a killer.
Yeah.
That one last week was not his fault. So
yeah. Now can the freshman go to Ubben and work out with Fletch? Now, Fletch is awesome, but I would not underestimate Tank Wright.
Yeah,
he came out of the Michigan machine, and if Ked and I had a good fortune of going and meeting with Tank at the Smith Center. I'm telling you what, if you don't think that guy can't motivate a bunch of people, you never met him before. And if you take a look at the Illinois players at large, I would say that I don't think there's any glaring issues that I can tell with Illinois' strength and development program. But we've talked about this before, and I'll let Steve and Ked give you their own opinion. But to me, to be a 4-star generally means that you're good, obviously a good football player, but you've got that extra quickness or that extra speed or size that gets you to that 4-star level versus the 3-star. And then when you get to a 5-star, you may have all three or two of the three. So you might be bigger, a little quicker, a little faster. That gets you a 5-star. And some of that stuff you can't fix in a weight room. I could be in a weight room the rest of my life, and I'm not going to have any lateral quickness. It's just not going to happen. And so I think sometimes if you're the strength coach, let's say at Ohio State, you got to get their guys to be in great shape. Every strength coach, has to do these things. But you have the raw material to get a little higher with what your guys do. Because if you saw the thing for number 8, the outside linebacker for Ohio State, who I told you would be a top 3 talent in all of college football this year, he benches 4-something. He runs a 4.58. He's 245 pounds. Some of that stuff is just God-given, and you can't go to Dylan Rosiak and give him that piece of paper and say, when you're done here, you're going to be 6'5", 245 and have a 400-pound bench and run a 4.58. So I think my guess is after watching and talking to Tank Wright, looking at the results that Illinois has got on the football field the last 5 years, I don't think Illinois has any deficiencies in their strength and conditioning football or the program.
Okay. I'm going to make a comment on that. So here's my thing. You're right. I think Tank's a good guy. I was impressed with him. And for the people who go to the games, if you get to sit close to the field, and if you've been a member or you've gone to a number of games, the size of the players today are different. I can honestly tell you. At the 8-minute mark of the fourth quarter, the press is able to go down on the field, and we're on the field before the games. I'm down there talking to recruits. I can tell you, and if I've ever told you the truth, I'm giving it to you right now. The size of the players down there now, they're Big Ten size. They look like Big Ten guys. They're big enough. The issue is, to me, and I'm sorry, and it's not me being mean, they are not athletic enough. I wrote an article, which is free because I work for another company, and you can read it. Kirk Signetti said it. Illinois is big, but they're slow. I mean, and I don't care how good Tank is or how good any strength and conditioning coach is. If you don't have the foot speed, you don't have it. I've complained about it. I've talked about it. And I've done recruiting for over 20 years. And Mike hit it on the head. 3-star kids. Now, some kids are overlooked because they don't go to camps. Some kids just, their parents don't have the money. There's kids that aren't able to go do some of these things. But the difference between a 4 and 5-star, when you hear a coach or an evaluator say their speed, their size, and the biggest thing now with 5 stars is they look at, could this kid play in the NBA? Could this kid play in the NFL? But it's strictly speed and strength, a lot of it. Because my last comment, if you remember how good Ohio State defense was, I think Indiana defended Illinois really good. Obviously, Wisconsin defended Illinois really good. But the closeout speed that Ohio State had against Illinois was scary. It wasn't close. I think Luke had a good game, but every time he looked to make a pass, they were a step in front of him. That's just, you can't teach that. And that's the difference between a 4 and 5-star, a lot of it. And some kids who are 4 and 5 stars don't pan out, not every kid. Which we all know. So I'm not preaching to, I'm not going to bore you.
Largely because they have those, they find out they're not as quick as they thought they were, or they don't have the ability to put on weight, or sometimes they're just not good football players. But
correct. And they don't pan out. But at the end of the day, that's what it ends up being most of the time, and I'll give one good guy. Matthew Bailey is a guy who didn't go to a lot of camps. He was underrated. He was a 2-star recruit, which all of them are until you sign with a Division I school. Once he signed with Illinois, he became a 3-star recruit. But that was a diamond in the rough that Brett found. I mean, and is there a chance he can play on Sundays? I think there's a slim chance. His health is a concern. But you can't build a roster with Matthew Bailey's and think that you're going to win with that, because those players might not pan out. Or Devin Weatherspoon.
So let me back up a step. First of all, just to echo the other guys, Tank Wright is not the problem. Tank Wright is a solid B+, I would say. Yeah, Fletch might be an A. Tank Wright is a solid B+. And to kind of echo the other guys again, the physical transformations I've seen some of these guys make from their high school recruiting videos that I watch intensely to, the guys that I'm seeing on the field today are very impressive. And then the power that goes with it too. These guys aren't just get fat. They aren't just weight room warriors. These guys are showing real Big Ten power and above average Big Ten power. And yes, I agree with Ked as well that we are lacking some speed, and I would like to do better on that. I will disagree with Ked a little bit in that I think the one thing I would say could be improved with Tank Wright is other programs are improving on speed and quickness too. There are ways to do it. I'm not saying, we've all saw you can't make chicken salad out of chicken, what.
My coach used to say that a lot to me all the time, and I started to take it personal.
It's not a situation where everybody's going to be able to add, drop 0.2 from their 40 time, but I've seen it done. It's definitely happened. It's happened in Illinois in previous regimes too. So that's one thing that we probably could get better. And I will say also, we've had quite a few guys come in. Again, I've watched these recruiting videos intensely. We've had quite a few guys who had track speed when they were at Florida, in Florida high schools, and then they bulk up, and then they get ready for Big Ten play, and then they're not track speed stars anymore. So
which is
tough.
the difference
You can't have
between,
both,
and that's the difference between a 3-star, 2-star, 1-star, and a 4 or 5, because the 4 or 5 is bigger and displays that speed, and that's sometimes part of it. And not to say that 1, 2, or 3 can't do that, but the likelihood is less.
And I will disagree with Ed with one thing. I think Matt Bailey is a star, and I think you can build a team with Matt Bailey's. His speed isn't actually that bad.
I think what I meant to say was, though, on that, Steve, is that you're not going to be able to be a. In other words, if you have all Matt Baileys, you might be wrong 30% of the time.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah, that's trouble. Yeah, you can't take a roster of Matt Baileys. Yeah,
I got to be honest with you. That first big hit he did in the first quarter, I was like, "Holy crap! I hope he didn't concuss himself again," because he just crushed that guy. And I was like, "Oh,
great player! I love that guy."
He plays hard, and yes, he does. And if you guys would have saw him in high school, because he's from where I live at in the same area, I'm telling you, that was a steal. I mean, I think and Brett Bielema's career since he's been there. I mean, granted, he didn't recruit Devin Weatherspoon. I think Devin Weatherspoon and Matthew Bailey have been the lowest stars who made the biggest strides, if they make sense. And Brett really thinks he has a chance to play at the next level, and I see the comment here where he played linebacker. I just think the kid is good. He's talented. And Steve, Mike's right. I know he could play at the next level. I think he's fast. And I've seen that speed improve. So you're right. I know that part can happen. My point was that you just cannot have if you recruit a bunch of Matthew Baileys, they're not all going to pan out. That was my point.
I know. I was just pointing out. I just can't take anybody dissing Matt Bailey. He's one of my favorites ever.
Me too. Trust me. I saw the kid play in high school. I know a lot about him personally and his coach. And I'm going to tell you, for the people out there who didn't understand, he was going to go to Iowa, and Iowa wanted him to walk on. That he was going to be a walk-on. I think North Dakota State or some other school was his other offer. And then Brett Bielema fell in love with him. And I remember I went to his press conference when he committed, and Brett went down to see him, I think, at one of our local taco shops here, and offered him a scholarship when he was on his visit. Matthew couldn't believe it. He was surprised. He was like, "Are you talking to me?" He was looking around because he couldn't believe that the university only offered him a scholarship. And, Mike, to your point, the one thing I would say about Brett Bielema and these recruits, and this isn't me just drinking the orange Kool-Aid or with the Stevie Wonder Ray Charles glasses on, Brett is really genuine. A lot of Division I coaches refuse to leave their desk, to get on a plane to go recruit a kid. You could be a negative 3-star. There's some sarcasm there. I know there's no such thing. Or a 4 or 5-star. Brett is going to come recruit you, and he's going to come talk to you. He's going to meet your family. And so many of these kids talk to me and tell me there's times where he's gone to Florida to talk to families, and football never came up. It was just about life. It was about how the world was going, just your family. And then the thing with Brett, how he's so smart and intelligent, he remembers their aunts or uncles. And when he sees them, he calls them out by their names. That's impressive to recruits.
I think, and again, I think the gloom and doom is something we can talk about in a minute, but I know, Steve, you've got a schedule you have to keep. So why don't we let you wrap up, and then Ked and I will go on until Mr. Matt appears.
Yes. We've talked about like future quarterback a lot. We've talked about future running backs a lot. I just wanted to alert somebody to something that's kind of glaring on the stat sheet that maybe people haven't looked at yet. If you look at our sack leaders this year, Gabe Akis, 9. Everybody else down here, scraps. We got 1.5, 2, and they're not bad players. Like when Gabe Akis hasn't been on the field, it's not been as terrible as it was last year, where we were just kind of helpless, or had to blitz or bring 5 just to bring pressure or whatever. But at the same time, I want to alert everybody to the idea that even though quarterback's a question, running back's a question, we're going to have some questions, I think, at safety. We really need to think about outside linebackers next year. So I would look. If somebody gave me, say, $10 million for a NIL budget for next year, I'd probably spend 1 on a quarterback who's pretty good. I'd probably go get maybe a stud wide receiver, who can make a difference, and spend 2 there. I'd probably spend 1 to get a good safety. I'd probably spend 1 to get a difference-making running back, and I would spend 3 to go get a pass rusher who can play outside linebacker. That's where we are really going to need some help. But I just wanted to wrap up with that. Just something we haven't really talked about yet, and I wanted to get to. So, but it's been a pleasure talking to you guys. Illini Nation, we're not down. We're not doom and gloom. We're all happy about today. I am certainly proud and thrilled. I was very nervous this is going to turn into another crushing Northwestern loss like we've had at the end of the season several times. So I'm really happy about that, and I look forward to the bowl game. So,
what's Brett's record against them? Is he 3-1 against them? I think 2-1, 3-1. Steve, you're right. I mean, we've been awful. I mean, they're winning. I mean, that's why you can't be mad. And if you look on Twitter before, I know you have to go, look at those players, the way they celebrated tonight. That win, it mattered.
That's what college sports should be about.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that'll matter. Like, that's the stuff that used to really matter before people were about dollars and cents. We have all that stuff that we didn't used to have. Hopefully we'll be a little bit more equal in the money. But anyway, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. So yeah, let's go back to this one. Why all the doom and gloom? Look, man, you're watching too many political things. We'll give you opinion on everything. We have not been all gloom and doom. And if you choose to listen to the stuff that makes you mad and run around thinking that's the problem, more power to you. You've been trained by political talk radio to think that way. This is the type of win we're excited about, but there's also parts of the team that could get better. And there were opportunities this year that this will be a year that 8 wins was a fun team. And it was a year that I think you'll say, what if they beat Wisconsin, which would have allowed them to go after the incredible 10-win season, which Illinois hasn't done very much. And that's just the way it is, And again, you look at the losses to Washington where we played let's not sack the quarterback. Makes you think what could happen there, how that would have been different. And I don't think anything would have been different with Ohio State or Indiana. So call me a doom and gloomer, I guess, but I didn't think Illinois was going to beat those 2 teams. So that's just me.
I thought going into Illinois could have beat Indiana, but looking at the end of the season, the way it panned out, Mike, it wasn't going to happen. And you're right. I don't want people to think that we're upset. We're not. I mean, we're just talking about analyzing the game, what's going to be next, from recruiting standpoint, all of it. You have to look at my face and Mike's face. We're not 25 years old anymore. We've seen when Illinois football was awful. We're running a business, here, and one of the worst things could ever happen is Illinois football to stink again, to not be good. I feel really confident. I don't know how it's going to work out. I feel really confident that no matter what, they're going to put a competitive product on the field. Are they going to win 8, 9, 10 games next year? I don't know. I couldn't tell you that. But I know I feel a hell of a lot better than having Brett Bielema here than Tim Beckman and the way Lovie Smith left the program. I'm sorry. And I was a huge Lovie Smith fan. I thought that was a great hire. So we're not upset. You know what? I mean, there's 8 games, and you're going to get to go to a bowl game. You look at the whole landscape of the Illinois athletic program. It was a bad loss against UConn this week. People want to fire Brad Underwood. And yes, we can get mad, overanalyze it. I get all that. But at the end of the day, you're going to the NCAA tournament. You're going to have a chance like everybody else. Think about what it was like for you older people when you knew on selection Sunday you were cutting your grass or cleaning your golf clubs because you knew you weren't going to go anywhere. You're going bowling this year. Where they're going to go, I have no idea. Would I love to see Illinois play Ohio State in the championship game or Indiana championship game? Heck yes, I would love to see that. But they're not going to get the opportunity to do that, but they're not sitting at home trying to lie to recruits thinking, okay, yeah, we just won 5 games and you know what, we're going to win 10 next year. You're going to a bowl game. And that helps with recruits because you can get them on campus watching you practice.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you look at Illinois football and you want to go, year by year, Illinois has had some crappy decades, not bad years. They've had bad decades. And so when you look, the last time that Illinois won 8 games back to back was 1989 when they went 10-2, and then came back in 1990 with an 8-4 record. Just so you guys know, at that point in time, I was 22 and 23 years old. I'm now 58. So Ked and I appreciate what we're seeing here under Brett Bielema. And, I've interviewed the man one-on-one a couple times, and I've said it before. I'm extremely impressed with what he puts together because he does not come across as a football coach. He comes across as an executive who's running a big company, and he understands what's going on. And so, unlike a lot of coaches in the past who've like, oh, I've got to run the offense. Mike White ran the offense. John Makovic ran the offense. Tepper ran the defense. Brett Bielema approaches this like a CEO. He gets the guys in place, and then he's there to help them and develop them, but he's not there to pull every string. Now, I'm going to talk about the doom and gloom because of Cignetti. It's not doom and gloom because, folks, we've seen something happen there, which a monster's been created. And I can put this back up here real quick. Yeah, hey, look, man, my dad's 84, and trust me, he knows whereof what you speak, even worse. But no, the bottom line is Cignetti. I'll be honest, Cignetti forces these other Big Ten teams to be honest. Because if you're going to try to chase him and the money they got coming, you better be dang serious. And that's exactly what you kind of need. So if somebody was half on the fence, do we need to keep investing in football? You look at that machine over in Bloomington and you go, yeah, we got to keep investing in football. And who knows, you have Mark Andreessen. There are other billionaires who come from the University of Illinois. Maybe they look at it and they go, well, you know what? We want our school to do well. Probably not, but if they did, those billionaires don't like losing at anything. So I'm all for doing that. So Cignetti, look, it's the market economy. He influenced these big people to put money into the worst program in D1, and it turned around because they got enough money, and he's an excellent coach. So what do you think on that, kid?
Mike, don't get mad at me for doing this, but I think you'll understand. I think you'll get my point. Mike mentioned the fact of what Brett Bielema was like. A few years ago, Mike and I attended, it was a media session with Brett Bielema. It was a ton of media guys there. And I'm going to give you our assessment and things that I heard that day and how intelligent he is. This is why I said, and Mike has said, if he had Ryan Day's talent, they would be playing next Saturday. We sat there at their media day with Mark Tupper, Jeremy Warner, Joey, Matt Stevens, myself, Lauren Tate, ton of guys all over the state that covers the University of Illinois. A lot of guys. And when Brett was on, he had this big screen up and he was explaining to us different situations, scenarios of the game, of what we saw, just like you see when you watch the game yourself. Brett had a totally different approach. There was a lot of information that he talked about, but the one thing that stuck out to me that I remember, Mike, and if you don't remember, I'm not putting you on the spot because it was a few years ago. He talked about a game that he had previously, and there was a missed field goal in the first quarter. And he didn't just say, yeah, it cost us the game. But he broke down analytics, which I'm not a fan of, and showed why that play affected and cost them the game. He's extremely smart and extremely intelligent. And for the people, a lot of people don't like the fact that he's complaining, he's mad, he's yelling. If you knew how many times the Big Ten has apologized to him for blowing calls. Remember the Michigan game a few years ago that they blew a call? He's smart. He knows. Tonight, I think the officials screwed him tonight. That wasn't a first down. I thought right away, I'm like, why are you giving him a first down? But he's so smart. He knows all the rules. You have a really good football coach here. Everybody is not going to win 10 games. You're not going to go 12-0. It's not going to happen. But, someone mentioned up here, old school fitness. He's 67. He's seen more bad football than Mike and I both. The fact of the matter is, this could be worse. I do not want to see an Illinois football team in 12 games give up 55, 58 points, and then win 2 or 3 games. I don't want to see that anymore. I'm sorry. And I feel confident, and that's why we're not upset that this is the right guy to lead Illinois to win a national title. He's not just trying to win fans and get you in the seats. He's trying to win just like everybody else is.
Yeah. Yep. And I think ultimately, I think the second half, both offenses, I think it went to more of an icy rain, and I think the field was relatively slick. And while the offense has an idea of where they're going, when neither of them can get a lot of traction, I think that slowed down both offenses. If you look statistically at what went on in the second half, it was not a great half for offense with a total of 9 points scored versus the first half that had 24. And I think that was a part of it. And I also think the offensive line I didn't think they played as well. Now, Steve disagrees with me, but I didn't think they played as well. But part of that, I think, was just the defensive line. They started bringing a lot of guys. There was a couple times when they were talking on the television, they counted up to 9 guys coming on a pass rush. That's hard to block. So I think ultimately, and this is where Brandon Lamp is now, I've got him on my side. I drive Sturdy and Ked nuts with we need more money so we can get better players. But I was always able to win when I was a district manager. I always won because my team was better than everybody else's team because I was able to hire the best people. But I did not have somebody that I was competing against who had a salary budget that was 3 times mine. So I was able to do a good job when it came down to hiring people in a certain salary range. I was one of the best in the country at hiring, and that kept me in the top 3 all the time. But I think he does need more resources to acquire players. And so if Illinois thinks they can just spend the 15.5 on football, I think that'll be tough. I think they're going to need money above that. And I can guarantee you one thing, Ohio State's going to have at least 20 million because they ain't going to spend less than 35 next year. So you're going to have to figure out ways to make sure you've got some extra NIL coming in so that you can attract the players. Where I think Bielema will have an advantage over a lot of these guys is he is very good at analyzing talent and picking the right guy. Nobody's perfect, but he's able to get these 1 stars and 2 stars and turn them into Hall of Famers. And you have to do that every once in a while if you don't have as much money as the big guys do. Ted?
They have to. Like I said to you, you don't think Nebraska has money now? And I'm not talking Indiana, Michigan, and Oregon. You don't think Washington's going to have money? You don't think Michigan State's going to have money? They're going to. And when you look at this whole TV contract and this whole revenue share thing, they're going to have money. And what's the difference of, I'm just going to compare Illinois and USC. Okay. Both have $15 million. Okay. So just because Illinois has $15 million, their $15 million is better than USC's, it's not, so you're going to have to be different. And Illinois did not create this monster. But you have to play the game. You have to go along with it. If they don't compete and they don't find ways, and it's not my money to do it, like I said, I'm not going to harp this because we talked about this the last podcast, they're going to stay stagnant. The advantage they had before was NIL transfer, and they could offer playing time, and you got to play for a coach who could put guys in the NFL. And I think right now he has 55 guys that play for him that play in the NFL underneath him. So that is a big selling point. But other people can say, you know what? Come to California. It's beautiful out here. You're not going to have to play in the snow like you did in Champaign where it was 32 degrees and ice. You're never going to have that unless you go on the road. So there's other selling points. Illinois has the coach. And I will tell you what, the fan base is great. I know the Illinois fan base drives a lot of people crazy, but I'm going to tell you, you talk about a loyal fan base, it's special. It is. You could go places and there are Illinois fans everywhere. They're just not as vocal as some people, but a lot of people do talk about that. And Luke Altmaier, I got to golf with him a couple years ago, and I'm going to tell you, he was surprised. He knew nothing about Illinois. But just the passionate and the way fans were to him, and being at that golf tournament with him, I know he was frustrated because every time he picked up a club and wanted to swing it, someone wanted to talk to him or take a picture with him. But he was impressed by that. You know what? It's a good fan base. It's a good school. They're going to win games. And you have an amazing athletic director. That can't go unnoticed either, because they're never going to go backwards as long as he's there. I don't think so.
No, and now St. Dominic's is making the point for me. That's has a lot of millionaires, although you might want to look at the amount of money that Eli Lilly has right now, which is unbelievable. But again, that's what Illinois has to do, is they have to successfully recruit those guys, keep them investing, and figuring out how to get them donating the way the Ryan family does to Northwestern, and the way, you know, Geese is doing right now. You know, you need more guys like Geese and Shad Khan, and so you keep those guys coming. And Bob Johnson is one that comes up all the time. Mark Andreessen, you see, obviously you've got a list of them there, and those are the individuals that I think Illinois should have somebody. And I know that probably Josh Whitman likes to keep this at him, but I think you need somebody who is pure sales background, who's in there talking to them on a regular basis, trying to give them that. And I think the one thing that you see Brad Underwood and Brett Bielema and Shauna Green do is they're willing to work with the people who are donating money. And I think that type of access is critical to the success of the company, of the university's sports teams, because people actually, they want that access, because that's what some of that money buys that. So, you know what, if you have Geese on the sideline and Shad Khan wants to stand there too, get two of them on the sideline. You get three of them. You know, who knows, if they want to pal around with Ked Prince for a day, they call us and Ked's going to hang out with them. That's just the way it is. And you know what, the Indiana has set the mold, but people have to understand something. Signetti influenced people who have never given money to the football program so that he could do that. And so I got to give Signetti, people think of him as just a football coach. He's more than that. And when I look at, I mean, there's definitely, that's so true. And it's a big company. And then Signetti is very good. But what Signetti's doing, and I'm going to take a little diatribe here, but Signetti is doing what Jimmy Johnson did for you here who are young. In the early 90s, he came to the Cowboys, late 80s, early 90s, came to the Cowboys, and he drafted for about 4 or 5 years. He literally could not miss in the draft because he was drafting people who he had recruited out of college. And so what Signetti's doing is he's taking the best guys from the James Madison area, because they weren't always a D1 program. They were down in that old 1AA, whatever you call them. And he recruited those guys, and he realized which ones were good enough to play at a higher level. And he's been getting those people for pennies on the dollar, and then saving up big amounts of money to get the quarterbacks, the two brothers, the wide receiver. It's a genius move. What Brett's doing now is he's going into the JUCO route. And again, the thing that's really important is you need to be right on most of these guys, or then that strategy doesn't work. Because I could go out and get a bunch of JUCO players that we find out who aren't good enough to play at Illinois, and then you could call me Tim Beckman. So that's the challenge. So Signetti is really good. And ultimately, I don't know if Nebraska has more money than Indiana now. I think in the past they did. But now Indiana supposedly is at 30 plus million for their team. So I don't know. But the interesting thing is Nebraska's heartbeat used to be getting corn-fed guys from Nebraska. Well, you need to do more than that, and then they could parachute in anywhere in the country and pick up a tailback or this or that. Well, that's not happening anymore. So they're finding it really hard to be Nebraska. So that just means there's space for an Illinois, but it isn't going to be easy.
I will tell you this. I don't know all the logistics yet. I know there are some that I could find out, but I'm going to make this perfectly clear. If the University of Illinois will let Shad Khan be free and do his thing, Illinois would have a hell of a lot more money. I'm telling you. Now, and I'm mentioning because St. Dominic talked about this. And I'll say that again. That guy is willing to give some money. There's two names up here that I've heard a lot of people talk about: the Pritzker family and Bob Johnson. Those are the two names that I know that if the things went right and that they asked and things played, if the cards fell in the right place, there's a lot of money there. Because all these schools, all these alumni schools have a lot of rich alumni. But like Brad Sturdy has always said, our colleague, they're not going to give $40 million every year. It's just not going to happen. There's only probably one guy I think who will do that, and I think that's probably Mark Cuban, and he's one of the smartest businessmen I think I've ever.
I don't think he gives over 10 usually.
I know I'm just being sarcastic, but he'd be smart enough to help Indiana. It is not my money, and I feel dirty for saying this, but if Illinois wants to be what Indiana and all these other schools are, Pritzker family, Bob Johnson, Shad Khan, Lucas Walton, all those people that's on this list, they have to help out. Because if they did, I think they pass some of these other schools. Because if you offered a player and you have the opportunity to play in the Big Ten, play on TV every week, and you're playing for one of the best coaches in the world, and you could offer him or her a lot of money, they're going to come to your school. You have no other reason that you can't, because you're going to be coached well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And so the one thing that people have brought up, which is incredibly important, and I've argued this for decades on Illini message boards, is you really need a Donna Shalala, Pat Richter relationship like you had at Wisconsin, which produced Barry Alvarez, and then you got what's his face for the basketball team, and they were clicking on all levels. And I think Josh Whitman is working on developing that. I think Josh Whitman is the prototype for an athletic director, and it would be perfect to see the top of the university have that same commitment. But that means they can't worry about, having a bunch of professors getting mad at Shad Khan about something that's not important, or Mark Andreessen, whatever. You have to figure out a way to get along and make things work for both sides. And there's always a way to make a win-win situation. You just have to be willing to do so, and you have to set your pride aside.
Mike, I'm sorry.
No, and the people who are at war with Mark Andreessen, I don't even know if they're still there from when it happened. So who knows?
Am I wrong in seeing this? Is Duke going to the ACC championship
Duke
game?
Duke is going to the ACC championship because SMU lost. So Illinois, that win looks a little better now. And I believe when they lost, I predicted that Duke would be in the ACC championship game.
Hey, look, there's Grizzly Adams with the beard.
Yeah. Matt made it over to the frozen tundra. So Matt, that game
he was out there with the shirt off, Mike. He was out there with the students with the shirt off. I saw it on TV.
He was doing his best Ben Johnson impression. Matt was running around the locker room going like this all the time. So now that you're back and dressed, Matt, what's your thoughts on the game?
Okay, do you want to do housekeeping items first? Or do you want to do the game? No, I'm serious. Like, this is Cagley's choice.
Let's do housekeeping. Let's do housekeeping for one. Let's do a housekeeping for 100, Alex.
Okay. The head coach said that he is looking forward with working with every member of the defensive staff for bowl prep. So if you think Aaron Henry's getting fired, I've got news for you. There's that. Or you think Brett Bielema is the biggest hypocrite on God's green earth, which I don't. Kind of laid it out there that he thought the game in Madison was according to the head coach, kind of, are we allowed to cuss here or not?
Yeah, sure.
He said it was kind of bullshit that what we did to the defense, putting them in those positions. So he was really happy with the way the defense held up in the second half, and he's looking forward with working with every member of the defensive staff during bowl prep. So if you were going to fire the defensive coordinator, I got news for everybody. It would be before you started bowl prep, and it would be before you started to do bowl prep at the end of December. You wouldn't wait till the end of December and then play the bowl game and then fire Aaron Henry. So Simon says Aaron Henry's coming back. Womp womp. Sorry, folks. Housekeeping items on Luke Altmaier. Asked Luke Altmaier, do you plan on playing another game for Illinois? And he gave the exact same answer that I've gotten from everybody in the Altmaier camp over the last 2 weeks. I don't know. He said, I'd like to. I really like to compete, but I don't know if we've seen the last game that Luke Altmaier might play for Illinois. I think if he had his decision about it, he would play in the bowl game, but I don't think he is lying, because Luke Altmaier doesn't usually have a dishonest bone in his body when he steps in front of a microphone with us, that he said he doesn't know what will come of tomorrow. And I believe him. So I think there's a good chance that Luke will play, but I think you might have seen the last game that Luke Altmaier plays in an Illinois jersey. Those are the housekeeping items that everybody kind of wanted to know before kick anyway. So that's what I got.
I'll tell you what I liked best about this evening was after the game, the look of sheer fun of some of the guys, probably from Florida, who were throwing snowballs at one another while they were carrying the trophy. We forget so much at college sports is about kids who just are out there having a good time, trying to win a few games. And I thought that watching those guys laugh and smile in the snow was just, it was heartwarming for me. So again, maybe I'm showing my age now, but I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. And I think also, not to, I mean, you can call me a homer if you want to, but I literally talked with somebody today that had been shoveling snow at Memorial Stadium since 9 this morning. So the job that the operations people did to even get this game, look, this game was going to happen because a 3-letter network demanded that it happen, and they didn't care if anybody was in anybody was in the stands. Did not care. They didn't care how many people ended up in a ditch between where I live in Peoria and Champaign. Like, they did not care. This game was going to be played at 6:30 on Saturday because the network partner told you to. But the operations job at Illinois to even get what I would think is like actually 15,000 people on the east side of the stadium, actually in the stadium safely, and hopefully everybody gets home safely. I have my confusion about how I'm going to basically skate on my tires all the way back to my hotel here, but we'll figure that out. But yeah, I hope everybody gets home safely. But the job the operations department did at the University of Illinois, I talked to a high-ranking Illinois athletics official who's been shoveling snow since 9 a.m. today, and give them a lot of credit for how they got this done. So those are my non-game housekeeping items. But I thought that was a big, on a game where we might not see these coaches and players again for like almost a month. Like, we'll see Brett Bielema again on Wednesday for signing day. But I thought he made a big to-do about how he sees the offseason and what's going on. So those are housekeeping items. Now, I have no idea what you guys talked about in terms of the game, but
we just, it depends on who we look at in the comments. Some people thought we were too negative. Other people don't think we're negative enough. So it's hard to know. I think, to me, that defensive stand after the Altmaier fumble that resulted, you don't see that very often. You get the ball on the inside the 10, and they come out with a field goal. I thought that may have been the game winner, because I thought emotionally, I think a touchdown there would have been devastating to the Illini morale. But I got to give the defense credit. They withstood that, and Miles Scott might as well have an S, not for Scott, but for Superman, with that performance in the second half.
Yeah, just addressing both of those things. It was 1st and goal from the 1. And we've talked about how Illinois really hasn't had a great fire department defense, where, you would have thought 6 points was going to get scored there. The fact that Northwestern, like you said, had to settle for a field goal and what was their only points of the second half. I think you're right, Mike. I think that was huge. From a momentum standpoint, I thought it was huge. Miles Scott, by the way, I don't think it's a coincidence that he comes up with these big plays, because he's the one that has the radio communication with Aaron Henry in his helmet. And he's had it all year. I think he's played his butt off. Look, you can point to the idea that Illinois showed up today with 3 interceptions on the season and had 3 interceptions today. I thought that was big in getting the job done. But I thought Miles Scott just made plays today and all over the field, whether it was those interceptions or whether it was, trying to be that extra guy in the run defense, because they really do walk Matt Bailey up every time. And it's just a matter of Miles Scott just not making sure everybody doesn't get beat deep. Miles Scott has been the advocate. I won't say the advocate, but he's essentially been the target of keep everything in front of you. The fact that Illinois has only gotten beaten deep, I can only remember like the Purdue game when Miles Scott literally looked at Matt Bailey and said, "What are you doing?" And they got beat on that big play. I haven't seen Illinois get beat over the top all year, and that's a tribute to Miles Scott. So for him to be able to make those plays, I thought was huge in his last game right here at Geese Memorial Stadium. I love it for him. And his story is awesome. We've talked about it before, but former walk-on, former wide receiver in the Lovey era, turns around and plays DB for Brett Bielema and might have a chance to play or at least get to a camp in the 3-letter football league later on in life. So his story's pretty cool. And then Mike, I just thought the defense really bowed up. What was it? It was at least 3 different times that Illinois couldn't get that dagger score, and they asked the defense to get another stop, and they did it every single time. So I thought, Brett Bielema made it very, very clear Aaron Henry and his defensive staff get a game ball tonight. And he made it very, very clear that the defensive staff was prepared for pretty much everything the Northwestern wanted to do. And I felt like their ability to turn Northwestern over, Preston Stone will throw you a few. We know that. And Illinois really took advantage of those opportunities tonight and was able to secure their 8th win because of it.
Yeah. Let's go into Illinois issue. Yeah, I agree that he was not a very good car wash manager. And, the bottom line is, we talked about this earlier in the podcast. To me, if you're a coach who's touting the fact that I didn't do anything wrong, I had no clue it was happening,
Sure.
I don't understand how that's an attractive pitch to any athletic director across the country, but I'm just me. Look, when I watch that there's a lot of things Illinois has wrong, to me, the biggest single thing you need is an upgrade in talent. Because if you put me and Matt and Brad Sturdy and Ked Prince and throw in Larry Smith, we aren't going to beat anybody in a game of basketball. And I don't care if you have John Wooden on the sideline and he's being helped by Dean Smith and Matt Painter. We're still not going to beat anybody. So I do think that the talent component Illinois has to address. And I'm not saying that the coaching can't get better, but I am saying that you need to continuously improve. And you are going to see, and I'm wanting Matt's opinion on this because usually
Sure.
Matt disagrees with me, but you are going to see over the next 5 years, you are going to see the SEC-ization of the Big Ten because teams are spending more money. You're going to get another coach in Penn State. Wisconsin is committed to spend more money. PJ Fleck is pushing Minnesota to spend more money. Iowa doesn't want to fall behind. Neither does Illinois. Indiana wants to pass up Ohio State, which is insane, but they are going to be pushing. Purdue is saying they're going to start spending more money. And UCLA is going to spend more money, as is Washington and USC. And God knows Oregon can't spend a lot more money, but they probably will try. So you're going to get this conference to the point where you're going to have teams that are pretty threatening to their non-conference schedule that may go 2-7 in the Big Ten. They may not be necessarily bad teams, but over the next 5 years, the depth, because right now I think Big Ten at the top is as strong as anywhere, but the depth component, it's going to get deeper and deeper. And I think it's going to get to be a very strong conference. And even some of the names that we're seeing out there for openings in the SEC, you're going to get some good coaches there. It's going to maintain its depth. Matt, I don't know if I'm reading this right or right.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I do think there's what I'm interested in. I'll answer this from 2 different levels. One is from the Big Ten level, Mike. I do think you're potentially going to see an even bigger chasm between what you would call like the top or like the top level of the Big Ten and the bottom level of the Big Ten. I think there's a huge chasm now. I think the chasm could get bigger. I think the gap could get bigger. I think the gap between, like, look, let's just be honest. Like, let's take the bucket game, for instance. Like the last two years, the bucket game has been played. Indiana has won it 122-3 over Purdue. That's the gap between Indiana and Purdue right now. And I think the gap could be that wide for Indiana and the number 10 ranked team in an 18-team Big Ten. If everybody's not careful. I'm not just talking about Indiana. I'm like those top tier teams that Mike mentioned that are looking at the CFP every year. I think the gap could get bigger. From Illinois' perspective, Mike, we've heard it from the last 2.5, maybe even 3 weeks from Brett Bielema, right? The roster has to be looked at in the offseason. He has said it and said it. And Mike, you and I both know we've had subscribers talk about he's got to change the staff. He hasn't said boo about the staff. Like, he has not said boo about the staff. He has said, I need to do a better job, and our personnel department needs to do a better job with roster construction next year. And specifically, and I think you kind of saw it today, Illinois needs to do a better job in the secondary in terms of roster construction. They can't have Xavier Scott go down in week 4 and then just be completely laid bare in the rest of the year in how they play defensive coverage, because their all Big Ten first team cornerback isn't there anymore. And Brett Bielema said it, like, that injury really did a number on what they thought was going to be a really, really good secondary. And they did not invest in the secondary like they wanted to. And they're probably going to compensate for that this offseason. I think they're going to really put a lot of money into their secondary so that they can cover the way they want to. But he has not said boo about the coaching staff. So I think Brett Bielema looks at what he did from a roster construction in 2025 and goes, that's not good enough, especially on the defensive end. You saw their NFL player create havoc today. 17 is going to be missed. I'm telling you, he's going to be missed. He's probably going to be a defensive rookie that's going to create havoc in the National Football League. Gabe Yakas is a guy that, Mike, you know that we talked about this when you hired me at IlliniGuys, and I said, hey, look, this kid's a freshman, but he reminds me so much of Simeon Rice. It's unbelievable. And when he wanted to turn it on in the second half, Mike, what happened? I mean, he created a whole bunch of havoc in the backfield, and Northwestern couldn't block him. They need more people like that. They need, and that's a defensive line issue of they're trying to develop people, and I think they're on the right path to do that, and they have the position coach and Terrence Jamison to do that, but they're not recruiting as much as a lot of Gabe Yakas as I've seen over the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm almost kind of sorry that Ked Prince isn't on here, because I've made the point to him that we need to stop this whole. He's doing great. Brett Bielema's doing great in the portal. He's doing great in recruiting. This recruiting class, according to some of the online sources, is a top 25 recruiting class. The 2026 class is the best one he's had since he's gotten here. The rest of them have been middle or lower tier recruiting classes that he's had to get everything out of, and probably more than everybody else thought. And you can't continue going back to my original point, Mike, of the chasm between the middle and the upper tier of the Big Ten. You cannot keep recruiting the 10th best recruiting class in the Big Ten and hope to God that you're going to compete for a college football playoff spot with those types of recruiting results. And I think Brett Bielema knows that. I think they know that they have to go in the portal and be more aggressive financially and in how they address certain position groups. And I think they know they have to be more aggressive in terms of what they're willing to compensate high school athletes that should be coming to Illinois and aren't. So I think from that standpoint, you're looking at, an Illinois team that's going to finish the regular season with 8 wins right after they just won 10 wins last year. And they're going to try and build off of that. But I think everybody's going to be impressed on Wednesday in the signing class, but it's the best one that Bielema's had in his 5 years here. And that needs to continue to be built upon. They've brought in so many 27s and 28s, but you saw what NFL looks like with Gabe Yakas. And Bielema thinks that he can get, guys like Miles Scott into an NFL camp. And I'm not saying that he's wrong, but you've seen what Luke Altmaier can do who's probably going to be drafted late in the National Football League. You've seen what a difference maker can do there. He has talked repeatedly about this 26 class where he thinks at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 guys in this class are instant true freshmen arriving in January and then starting that next August as true freshmen. So if that's the case, then Illinois feels like they have a really, really hopeful future along with a pretty darn good present with 18 wins over the past 2 years. So
that's what you need to recruit nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, kids are not interested. I mean, look, in my era, you would, a lot of us would have been more like, well, I want to go to the team I want to go to, not just be the 16th generation of guys to go on to a school that had already been good. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's different, I think, nowadays a little bit. And I'll be honest with you. Here's one. This is interesting because, so as a kid, I grew up in Muhammad. I grew up reading Lauren Tate's Tate lines. And every year I would have a chart of the top 25 or 50. I can't remember what it was. I think it's 25 that the News Gazette did for the state of Illinois. Lauren can correct me if it was top 50.
Sure.
But Illinois might, in a good year, get 4 or 5 of them. And that was with Mike White. Because at that time, you had Notre Dame, Michigan, and Iowa was starting its creep into there.
Mhm.
Wisconsin still sucked, so we didn't have to worry about them. Ohio State would come in, and then every once in a while, you'd see USC or Penn State or Alabama airlift in, but not very often.
Sure.
And now it's really tough to recruit Chicago because Iowa and Wisconsin have their tendrils in there like they never had before. Notre Dame's always been there. It's always going to be kind of like their backup home team.
Right.
Michigan has built a good base there, but now Ohio State's in there a lot more. And then the big schools parachute in with cash, just like when Duke in basketball wanted Jabari Parker. Well, once they wanted Jabari Parker, Illinois was out of the picture.
Correct.
And it's the same way in football. So like there's a 5-star tight end up there for 2027 that I don't think he's even looked at Illinois. I mean, it's basically like Ohio State and Texas. So it is not, when people say we have to get the best players in Illinois, I agree with the premise, but just want to remind you that in the history of Illinois football, it has never been done. And
Right.
the same can be said, ironically, about Atlanta. Georgia does not control Atlanta. Everyone goes into there and gets players. Georgia gets its fair share, which is what Illinois should have as their goal.
Right.
The same with LA, except the Pete Carroll era where they were getting everything.
Mhm.
And then New York has never been that way. And Dallas, where I live right now, has never been controlled by Texas. So it's very, very tough in principle. It's very, very tough. And as I've said, as long as I can remember, Notre Dame has been taking the best out of the Catholic League for as long as I can remember, but as long as my dad can remember, and I'm assuming goes all the way back to Newt Rockne. But
So can I address that one quick?
Yep.
Okay. First point I will tell you is that's an absolutely 100% accurate historical lesson on what has happened with Illinois football recruiting probably in my lifetime, and I'm 41. Okay. Unfortunately, Mike, I'm going to give Brett Bielema and everybody at the Smith Center the Don Draper line. That's what the money's for. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I'm asking you to do something that's historic because that's what the money's for. That's what the money I pay you is for. That's the best way I can describe it. Mike, I was literally standing. I'm going to give you an example of today. Okay. I mean, they lost to Ohio State in the big game today, but I stood on the field in Naperville and with Ryan Walters and Brett Bielema to watch Jair Hill play his senior year of high school, a game in his senior year of high school down in Naperville. Okay. Or I'm sorry, in Kankakee. And I'm sitting there and they tried real hard to get him and he ended up going to Michigan. And they would have loved to have had Jair Hill. And Jair Hill he would have been obviously a 4-year starter at cornerback for Illinois and the whole nine. He would have been the next Devin Witherspoon in their eyes. And you're going to see him get drafted in the first round, in out of Wink Martindale system in Michigan. And he's going to make millions of dollars. But Ryan Walters and Brett Bielema were down to probably the were of the 3 finalists that Jair Hill was going to choose. And he ended up going to Michigan. Mike, you know how I felt about Jimmy Rowland, over at Marist. He's the starting middle linebacker at Michigan, and they have a really good defense.
And man, did Bo Jackson put a move on him today. Holy cow.
Sure did.
Wow.
But he's going to be a really good player.
Yeah.
And he's got another year of eligibility.
Play in the NFL, yeah.
I mean, that's a Chicago Catholic League kid at Marist that they wanted really bad, and they were going to let him play baseball at Illinois and be a dual sport kid. And his dad played football at Illinois. His dad was an offensive lineman. Scott Kehoe is an offensive lineman for Illinois under Mike White. And it came down between him and Illinois and Michigan, and he picked Michigan. The last example, I'll give you is, you look at what Illinois does in this 26 class, which I think is a really, really good class. Don't get me wrong. But they probably need a difference maker at tight end when Tanner Arkin's gone. Well, Max Sutter's not coming here and J.C. Anderson's not coming here. And so I'm asking Illinois to do things. And when I use the stat, Sturdy gets really mad at me when I use the stat. But it's just a fact that if Illinois wants to change, the perception of what they are nationally, the last 5 recruiting classes, if you take the top 10 ranked Illinois recruits, Illinois has gotten a total of 3 of them. That's 3 out of 50. You can't do that. You just can't have that kind of be the percentage and expect to be a college football playoff contender. And I've had people tell me, but yet Brett Bielema is going to be in contention for that this year. Well, you saw the talent difference, like at the top of the league, and a lot of you saw, they would have loved to have had. Mike, you saw me last week use the example of Darren Dupree.
Yeah.
Mount Carmel
Wisconsin
kid.
tailback.
Yeah, Wisconsin tailback, Mount Carmel kid. They would have loved to have had him. And he goes to Wisconsin. So you see those stories all the time. Where I'll break it down for the future, that's the past, and that's what Brett Bielema's got to break through, and he's got to figure out how to do roster construction better. The future is Cameron Wagner was here tonight, the offensive tackle from St. Joe. He was here. His mom was here tonight, and in I would consider unsafe conditions to be driving from St. Joe. Kent Brown was here tonight, by the way, and so it couldn't have been that bad to go from St. Joe to Memorial Stadium tonight. But it's not the best driving conditions in the world. It's not it's not the safest, and it's probably not the greatest conditions to sit and watch a football game. But Jana was here, and her son Cameron Wagner was here. And so I think Illinois is going to be in the mix. Is Illinois going to get Cameron Wagner? I don't know. But you're talking about somebody in the 2027 class that's probably going to be one of the top 5 kids in the state, if not higher than that. So Illinois is trying. Illinois is really, really trying, but trying's not going to be good enough anymore. Trying's going to get you what's very similar to what you got this year. And I think the bar of expectations has been raised, and we can't, as a media, talk about how great Brett Bielema was doing in state and how Brett Bielema was doing great. We can't keep looking at these kids that sign with Illinois and go, well, Brett Bielema's just cranking it, in recruiting. And I've tried to tell people that's the first thing that's got to change, and it's got to get better. And you can't have your head coach. I remember last year on signing day, you can't have your head coach standing up at the podium and going, hey, apparently today was National Bank Day for a whole lot of programs. It just wasn't for us. I mean, that's not the thing you need to sell. And so I think Brett Bielema's gotten the message into his head that we have to go a different way in terms of roster construction. And I think you're seeing that, and we'll see what happens. But I will say this, I think David Braun's done a hell of a job at Northwestern, but when Illinois plays a Northwestern, when Illinois plays a Purdue, there is no excuse as to why Illinois shouldn't have a better roster right now than those programs, because they do. I think what David Braun's done at Northwestern is unbelievable, because I do think for talent, player for player, that's a 3-win roster that he's going to go bowling with this roster. And I think that's phenomenal. But I do think Illinois right now in the Brett Bielema era is always going to have a better roster, talent for talent, player for player. And that's not the end goal, but it's a baseline to where this program is compared to when Brett Bielema took it over in 2021. He said it so much in the post-game radio show, Mike, where he said, hey, I think we'd lost 6 in a row to Northwestern before I got here, and I think I'm 4-1 now. So there's at least a data point in which Brett Bielema flipped the script, at least in state, and you just kind of got to build on that.
Yeah, a couple things real quick, and then we got to
Sure.
wrap up here.
Sure.
Just closing the door in Iowa is different than closing the door in Chicago. Iowa is they don't have pro sports. You've got the University of Iowa dominates the majority of that state, and it's just different than Chicago. Think of Chicago as the capital of the Midwest. You've got graduates from Iowa, Wisconsin, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, Illinois. I mean, everybody in there. And so you're never going to control that like you would there. East St. Louis has always been a tough recruit for Illinois, as long as I remember. But I think obviously East St. Louis is one that you want to be getting. We've gotten a few athletes from there. Brandon Henderson comes to mind.
I mean, Brandon Henderson and Melvin Priestley are teammates on the East St. Louis team that won, 3 straight state championships. So
yeah. So I mean, I think they're trying to do as best they can there.
Right.
Talent evaluation. Fedigator and I are gonna disagree on this, because I think Illinois with less money, between $5 and $9 million this year compared to 30 to 40 million that Ohio State has. Illinois can't afford to be wrong, and Ohio State can afford to have a 5-star or 2 that crap out every year and just go, no big deal, we'll get another one. So you saw that when they had Tate and Smith sit out against Rutgers
last week,
arguably their 2 backups could have been the best duo of wide receivers in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think Brett Bielema might agree with Fedigator a little bit, though. Like, this is what I'm trying to say.
Better. There's no
this is what I'm trying to say, though,
mistakes.
Mike. I think they thought their talent evaluation and their roster construction in 2025 needs to be retooled and rethought about. And so for all the people that think you're going to bring in a new defensive coordinator and it's going to solve all your problems, I think that they feel like the players that were out there this year after Xavier Scott got hurt, especially in the back, weren't good enough. And they just didn't have any confidence in those players. And so that's why you saw Illinois show up at the park today with 3 interceptions. They got 3 in the game today, but they got 3 interceptions. That's unacceptable. But I think Brett Bielema has looked at this and said, hey, look, we've got to figure out a way. And I think they're doing this, Mike, most recently in the junior college department. I think they're finding people that they're saying, hey, we got to update what we're doing, especially in secondary in terms of talent, because what we're doing coaching-wise works. You guys can debate whether or not you think Brett Bielema was right about this, but he's pretty confident in his coaches, I believe. Now, he could completely just 180-degree this on me, but it's a complete 180-degree difference from what he said in postgame today. I'm just telling you that. And so I think he's been really consistent the last 3 weeks that the roster construction and how they go about it's got to be better and it's got to be different. Because if it's not, you're going to see similar results and maybe worse results when you don't have a quarterback that can, quite frankly, win you some games like the way Luke Altmaier did. So there's a lot of truth to that. And so I think that this offseason is going to be really big for Illinois and how they go about addressing that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And like I said, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to recruiting up there, and Purdue is another team, as people have noted, that's going to get there. They've committed to put more money into it as well. So these are things that are never going to be easy for Illinois, and it's a combination of Illinois not being particularly good over the last 50 years. And they also need to figure out how to deal with what we have in terms of NIL funds to better build that. But we're about ready to do it, to shut down here. But I would ask you, if you got a chance, give us a follow, me at Mike Cagley or Matt at Matthew C. Stevens. Do that on Twitter. You get a lot of information without having to do much. Just go on in and hit the follow button while you're here. That'd be great. And anytime you can share our stuff on social media, that is a huge help to us, because basically word of mouth is the biggest and most effective way to spread the news. IlliniGuys.com, $99 per year. You get Ked, Matt, Brad, Larry, myself that you can talk to all the time directly in the message boards. It's a lot of fun. And as basketball season goes, it heats up and you want to get in the middle of some fiery debates. Go ahead and join IlliniGuys and start putting out your opinion of the coach, pro or negative. You will get plenty of fire from all over the place. So it's a lot of fun in that respect. So, folks, we will be back, of course, next Saturday. We may put a show together, but it's been a crazy week and a half. But we will be back with the live show during the Tennessee game. Until then, folks, thank you so much for listening or watching, and we will see you. Until then, go Illini.